All right, we're back. It's another Carolina podcast. It is the Wednesday after maybe the worst loss of the Will Muschamp era. South Carolina falling to North Carolina 24-20. We're going to get into that, all the implications therein. We've also found out that Jake Bentley has a foot injury that's going to sideline him for a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks. Huge implications there with Ryan Helinski and DeCarrion Joyner being the next two guys up. What to expect from them in the coming week against Charleston Southern. Also want to give a big shout out real quick to our two sponsors for today's podcast, Slotsky's Deli and also Terry Bishop. We're going to have a little fun with some buy or sell with Terry Bishop later in the podcast and tell you a lot more about Slotsky's Deli at the end and the contest they got going on Gamecock Central as well. Also wanted to take a moment to remind you to rate, review, subscribe, share it with your friends if you like the podcast and you want us to keep doing it. That's a great way to support the pod. Wes and Chris, y'all both made the wise decision not to travel up to Charlotte. I made the foolish decision to travel up to Charlotte and be a part of the mob of approximately 4,000 people that were in that stadium, making it certainly one of the least raucous environments I've ever been in my life. The game was just terrible all around. I know we've spent 4 days just dissecting this very thoroughly, so we won't spend as much time on this as we will, the implications for the future here for South Carolina. And again, the biggest news of this week, even more than the loss against North Carolina, is honestly the quarterback situation for Carolina. But let's go big picture. What in your opinion was the biggest thing that went wrong on Saturday in the upset loss against North Carolina, Chris?
One thing. That's tough to pick.
One big thing.
One big thing. Man, I'll tell you, I've got to say, and I fully realize that the offense didn't play well, particularly up front and at the quarterback position, but I've got to say defensively, the two drives that they gave up where North Carolina was backed up, inside the 5, those were the backbreakers because you get there. We could talk a lot about the decisions to punt. I think they had a 4th and 6 and a 4th and 1.
4th and 6 from the plus 38 and 4th and 1
and a
from
4th and 1. And we could talk about those, sure. At the end of the day, North Carolina's backed up inside its 5. Then you get, on one of those, you get a stop on first down for a loss, so you're 2nd and 12 inside the 5. And then you allow a huge run. North Carolina goes down. They eventually score about a 98-yard drive. Then you have another 90-plus yard drive for the only 2 touchdowns in the game. Those were the backbreakers to me. There are a lot of obviously different issues during the game, but I think those 2 drives, so the play of the defense and just missing tackles and things of that nature, I think if you had to pick one issue out of the game, that was the difference for me.
That's fascinating. I've heard a lot of that in the last couple of days, and I think the defense is like 3rd or 4th in terms of things that I was worried about bigger picture taking away from that North Carolina loss, because for the majority of the game, they played well. And I agree with you. Those were the back-breaking moments, those 2 drives. They were horrendous, but that was almost half of North Carolina's yards. That was obviously more than half of their points. It was 2 really, 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 really bad drives. That's going to happen, but to that point, they had allowed 9 points, and then even after that, they did a good job of getting the ball back for Carolina. I'm not excusing the defense completely, but for me, I don't care if they give up 24 points. Carolina always was going to have to score, or always should have been able to score more than 24 points. And I can't kill the defense for having 2 bad drives. If they gave up 1 long touchdown in the first quarter, 1 long touchdown in the third quarter, I feel like we would be talking about this a little bit differently. But it happened back to back, and it was long drives. It was 95 and 98 yards, as you mentioned, and so it was glaring. But for the most part, I think they did a reasonably good job. And you also have to credit Sam Howell. Once they, kind of took the training wheels off in the second half, he made some unbelievable throws. That touchdown pass in the back corner of the end zone that ended up being the number 1 play on SportsCenter that night was, very decent coverage by Israel Mukwamu, but it was just an excellent throw and an even better catch. So I'm not ready to kill the defense yet. Yes, there are things that need to be fixed. They need to tackle better in the open field. There are some, Will Muschamp talked about it in his press conference yesterday, some other things just in terms of getting guys in the right place that do need to be fixed. But that was not one of the top 3 concerns for me. Wes, what was your biggest concern coming away from Sunday or Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, obviously plenty of blame to go around. I sort of went to the other side, offensive line. I thought the interior of the line in particular, obviously the fact that there's wholesale changes already. They're 3 different spots are getting shuffled around. I think sort of speaks to that. Obviously, quarterback play not where it needed to be either. I think there were opportunities in the passing game that were there. that were either missed, both from a physical standpoint where, ball is off, ball is thrown too far, but then from a mental standpoint, just not getting rid of the ball. I felt like the idea of protecting the football has been so hammered into Jake Bentley's head all offseason that it almost sort of worked against him. There's always like a give and take of, how many chances do you take? And that if you take chances, that obviously inevitably leads to more situations where maybe there's going to be a turnover, but it also maybe leads to more big plays. If you don't take many chances, then that takes away those turnover opportunities, but then takes away many of your big play opportunities too. So I felt like there were times when, for whatever reason, Jake was just hesitant to get rid of the ball, and I think that hurt him. They apparently I had a big problem, at least my first watch, with the game plan, in that there weren't any shots deep. Now, we find out later on maybe there were shots called. Muschamp said there were 17 different opportunities to go downfield that were called, and the ball didn't go for one reason or another. Some of that's protection, obviously. So
some of it's protection, some of it's receivers not getting open, and some of it is taking those shots and just missing them.
Yeah, so to me, whatever the reasons, if we're looking forward, some passes hitting down the field are a must. You have to be able to do that, and maybe that's the reason. We were talking about the running game off air. I thought the running backs played very well, both those guys. But then I think you look at the offensive line, I didn't think they consistently blocked enough. I thought as the game went on, they blocked well early on. They didn't block as well as the game went on, and maybe some of that is that the defense doesn't really have to defend the field vertically. If a defense can sort of, hey, they're not going to beat us over the top, then both from a scheme and play call standpoint and from just a mindset standpoint, you're attacking. And so I wonder if maybe that didn't have something to do with it. But yeah, missed opportunities. And, looking back, it didn't really necessarily feel like it watching the game. I felt like early on the offense played pretty well. Then as I go back and I see, several opportunities where you get the ball in great field position and either do nothing or scores come off of a short field. So, I thought the one area of the team that actually performed very well was the special teams.
Mm-hmm.
They kept putting South Carolina in good spots.
Two good punt returns, a big kick return.
Yep, you have
blocked field goal.
You have a blocked field goal. That I had almost forgotten about
Everyone
that.
forgot about it because it ended up being irrelevant.
Yeah, you had obviously you had the one missed field goal, but that's from 53 yards. You had one shanked punt, but then you had two other punts that are downed.
Yeah, he still averaged 43 yards a punt, I think, for the game.
Yeah, so special teams were good. Just the other two sides obviously had a lot to desire, and the missed tackling stuff is obviously the big takeaway on defense. Will Helms, what was the stat? Was it something like 34 yards?
37 yards before contact, I think. It was like 0.8 yards a carry, which is absolutely elite.
Yeah, so if they're you're going to have
then
some
you're
missed
missing
tackles.
Yeah. Anybody.
If they had no missed tackles, that's how many yards rushing, right? That North Carolina
rushing yards.
Had.
Yeah.
And so that just goes to show you how much of their yardage was from guys missing tackles, which is going to happen week one, but it just happened way too often.
Yeah.
And it even felt like that watching the game. I was like, man, they have been in position so many times. And I
Do you know how many times they started a possession in North Carolina territory?
South Carolina's offense?
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head.
Five.
Okay.
5.
Yeah.
How many possessions will they start in enemy territory in the next 5 games? Like maybe 5? That's unbelievable. 5 possessions started in North Carolina territory. They got 7 points out of it.
Yeah.
The other thing is they got in the red zone. They weren't good enough there because USC, they had 4 trips inside UNC's 25. Okay, and then they had another that started on the UNC 26. But they threw an interception on the one that started on the 26. And then they got 1 touchdown, and then they got 2 made field goals.
The other thing is, I don't know how many snaps Carolina actually ran from the true red zone inside the 20. It may just be 1. I can only think.
And
of
I was
one
counting
off
the
top of my
25.
head. Yeah, but if you go
area.
inside the 20, I think Carolina really only had 1 snap in there. I think they had the ball in like the 19 or the 18, and then they had lost yardage on the next play. That was really troubling. You talk about an offense, moving up and down the field and then stalling inside the red zone. Carolina couldn't even get there. The one touchdown run was 30 yards. The touchdown pass was, I think, 26 yards or maybe 28 yards. So they were doing their damage, what damage they did do from outside there. And we saw it time and again. Those drives just stalled. That first drive, Carolina was humming. I was like, okay, this looks great. This looks like sort of what we expected to see from Carolina. That first pass to Brian Edwards, you're getting the ball going. Rico Dowdle ran the ball well, especially in that first drive. You get down there, I think it was a 1st and 10 from like the 30-ish. They run it for 3 yards. It's 2nd and 7, and then you run that pop pass to De'Carrion Joyner that gets blown up. You're in a 3rd and long situation, and then Carolina is forced to kick a field goal, and that felt like a big loss at the time. And then the entire game was just that over and over again. And so for me, Wes, you kind of addressed, my top 3 issues, I guess, in reverse order. I would say the third biggest concern would be the offensive line play. I think a lot of that is exacerbated by the fact that North Carolina, when they were up at the end of the game, they were just bringing pressure, just pin your ears back because Carolina's got to throw the ball. And so it looks a little bit worse. The numbers look worse when you see the end of the game, and North Carolina could just kind of come no holds barred, not have to worry about Carolina running it. Number 2 would have been the quarterback play for me, because even as poorly as Carolina played, as many opportunities as they missed, if Jake Bentley connects with Shi Smith, we're probably talking about Carolina narrowly escaping Charlotte with an undeserved win. And that's the reality of the situation. But for me, the biggest problem was the game plan. Carolina continually being way too conservative. We've seen it a million times. And as much as I have successfully disconnected myself from football, and specifically from South Carolina football over the years, given that I was absolutely psychotic in college, I feel like I've done a better job of compartmentalizing that now. The one thing that always makes me absolutely lose my mind is when Carolina gets the ball, on their own 40 or farther down the field with 30 seconds left and a couple timeouts going into halftime, and Will Muschamp just kneels on it. To me, that is how, I don't know the number. I need to look. But I feel like every time Carolina does that, they lose the game. They did it in the Florida game. They did it in the North Carolina game. In this case, you had 20 seconds left. You were on, I think, your own 40. You have 2 or 3 timeouts left. Just take a couple shots. See if you can get into field goal range. So that, the punt inside of the 40, which I think it should be illegal. I think it should be a 15-yard penalty if you decide to punt inside of the plus 40. That's always a dumb decision. I don't care if it's a good punt. I don't care if you pin the opponent deep, which Carolina did. That is losing mentality. And then the other one was not going for the 4th and 1 at midfield. Just those 3 plays really summed up for me an overly conservative game plan that ultimately cost Carolina the game, in my opinion.
We need to get Will Helms on that stat. He's the unofficial statistician, or maybe the official one.
Definitely the official one. That dude's got stats out the wazoo. I love it. He does.
I've got one more point on that, and just in terms of one of maybe the turning point of the game. If South Carolina had won the game, there'd still be a lot of issues, right? I mean, you said it. But to break down, so South Carolina goes up 20-9. You're in decent shape there. You're up by 11. They need a field goal, touchdown, 2-point conversion.
You're still thinking about Carolina covering the spread, or at least I was. I'm like, cool. This could still easily be a cover.
So you're thinking, so North Carolina's got the ball back. Well, they sack Sam. They strip. J.C. Horn comes on a blitz, strips the ball from Howell. Now you're in business because you're up 29 and you're around midfield-ish. I can't remember exactly what yard line, if it was plus. I think it was maybe still South Carolina side. Can't remember. So they're up 29. They actually called a pass play. They called, or at least an RPO. Can't recall, but I know the result ended up being first down. They take a shot. If you complete that, you're 27-9 and you feel great. They miss it. It's an overthrow to Edwards. He did have a step. Would have been a great effort by everyone all around to complete it. So now you're first down, but unfortunately, and I should have backed up, even if they complete that, there's a holding penalty. So now you're first and whatever. Right after that, you get a false start. So now you're 1st and 25. After you got a chance to really seize the momentum, you take an effort to take a shot, which is what everybody wants there. Now you're 1st and 25, so they run it twice. They complete a ball to Shi Smith, get 14 yards or so. But they're still, I think that ended up being the 4th and 6, right?
Yeah, that's 4th and 6 from the 38 right there.
Yep.
Well, here's the other damning sequence. I think that's a really good inflection point. Here's another one. North Carolina, right after that, North Carolina marches on the field. They score. I don't remember if that was the 95 or the 98-yard drive, but they score, they cut, and they get the 2-point conversion, so they cut it to 2017. Next series for Carolina, run play, run play, run play, run play, swing pass. That's the Falcons Super Bowl. Seriously. I mean, it was, you could see it unraveling in the moment, and you knew exactly where it was going. As soon as Carolina was playing scared, frankly, and just saying, let's get out of this game, let's just try to squeeze out of here with a win, and trying to hang on as opposed to trying to actively go win it. That was the beginning of the end for me. That sequence right there.
Well, we don't know how many of those are any of those RPOs.
It's hard to tell. I don't know.
But yeah,
I think the first one may have been. That was one that Jake ended up pulling and running. So that was one that I think theoretically could have been. I don't know if it was an RPO or if it was just a simple read option. But regardless, I mean, it was that was the case all game. Carolina not willing to take shots, and it wasn't even. So I was digging back into the numbers yesterday, and after Will Muschamp said they had dialed up 17 different shots, by my unofficial count, going back and watching the game on Sunday, Carolina threw the ball 10 plus yards down the field, like the ball traveling 10 yards in the air, 14 times. 7 of those came when they were behind in the fourth quarter. So only 7 shots of 10 plus yards through the first 3 quarters. But the other number that stood out to me, intermediate passing routes. When the ball traveled 3 to 10 yards in the air, they only threw 5 passes in that area the entire game. Everything else was bubble screen, swing route. It was a little hitch, a little slant, things like that. It's not even so much that you need to take shots. You just need to diversify what you do in the passing game, or else it becomes really, really easy for defenses to diagnose.
Yeah, and to go back, I think my biggest issue was probably with, like you said, the conservative. And I think from a play calling standpoint, it's not. We can't always tell exactly what they wanted to happen,
right?
So just in general, when people talk about play calling, I feel like most of the time when somebody says, "Oh, this play calling sucks," it's because that's basically them saying, "Oh, those plays didn't work,"
right?
And it's like, well, we don't know what they were trying to do. We don't know who ran a wrong route, who missed the block up front, we don't know all the ins and outs of that. But we can sit here and say for sure that the game plan, in-game decisions were conservative. And I think, for one, it sends a shaky message to your team.
Exactly.
And I just wonder, does that mindset sort of permeate the team?
That was exactly my thought. Because Will Muschamp defends, those 2 horrific punts, in my opinion, horrific. And it's like, well, if they work, if you get the stop. I'm like, no. What that says to me is that you are not confident in your team. And that, even if you're saying, well, I'm confident in my defense to get a stop, I think ultimately it's saying, I am too concerned to go for this. And I think that sort of uncertainty creeps into the whole locker room.
And fact being, if it's 20-9, and we don't know if you're going to even convert the 4th downs. The offense didn't really give us much ammo to say that they were definitely going to convert either of these 4th downs, frankly. But if it's 20-9 and you go score on that drive, South Carolina's winning the football game.
100%.
And I think that's one of those moments where you say, look, blood is in the water. You just, like you said, you just turned them over. They're not in a good place right now. You have all the cards in this scenario. That's your chance to have a killer instinct, go win the football game. If it doesn't work out, it's not like you're going for it on your own side of the field. It is 4th and 6. But if you pick that up, you continue the momentum on your side. And frankly, I think any 4th and 1, you should probably be going for it. But we know that's not going to happen.
And especially when they just scored, they have all the momentum in the world. Your lead has been cut to 3.
Yeah,
that is when you go for it. That's when you say, no, we're the bigger team, we're the better team, we're going to be more physical, we are going to impose our will. But instead, Carolina was passive. North Carolina was able to continue just dominating Carolina in that last stretch of the game.
And I tell you, as much as we talk about Muschamp being conservative, defensive-minded coach, I feel like last year we saw him adjust a bit. We saw him go for it on 4th down a lot more last year. If you go look at the numbers, the scenarios like that, Muschamp, and maybe it goes back to not being comfortable with his defense last year, because we all know, especially late in the year when the injuries piled up, the defense was not good. So maybe that was more out of necessity. But, we saw him be more aggressive as far as in-game decisions, not kicking long field goals, going for it when you're at that sort of 30-yard mark, and going for it at midfield. And I don't know. I think if you lose a game being aggressive, not that anybody's going to cheer you losing to North Carolina. That's not what I'm saying. If you lose a game being aggressive, it is much more palatable for the fan base than it is to lose a game punting, just because the whole idea of punting just sits wrong with people. So it even if the call is right or wrong, whatever, if you go down swinging, people are going to respect that, I feel like, a bit more than
just look like
otherwise.
You're trying to win, There were a lot of problems. There were a lot of problems on Saturday. One that we haven't spent a ton of time on, and I'm glad that we haven't spent a lot of time on because, frankly, at this point, it is sort of moot. But Jake Bentley was not at his best. He was 16 of 30, just missed a lot of passes late in the game, didn't command the offense, didn't connect on any deep balls, and part of that is you could say he was under pressure. Part of that you could say is receivers not getting separation on a lot of those vertical routes that Will Muschamp wanted to hit. But the reality of the situation is, however Jake Bentley did or did not play on Saturday is irrelevant. He's got a foot injury, a Liz Frank injury. They are not sure if it's going to require surgery and will end up being season-ending, but the conservative estimate on the diagnosis is 6 to 8 weeks, which means Ryan Helinski, who was named the backup quarterback a couple weeks ago, is the starter, at least for the Charleston Southern game. Obviously, I think that will be a somewhat fluid situation going forward. But I think for a lot of Gamecock fans, this is exactly what you want to see. I think Gamecock fans are happy about this, not happy that Jake's injured, but happy because it seems like it was overdue for a change, given how Jake played on Saturday. It seemed like he wasn't the guy to command this offense anymore. And people are really, really excited about Ryan, a guy that's got a lot of maturity, a guy that has come in and seemingly done an excellent job of picking up the offense, and a guy that's got all the physical tools in the world. But I will ask you two guys that have watched Helinski, that have talked with him, a lot more than just about everybody listening to this podcast right now. What is a fair and reasonable expectation for Ryan Helinski this weekend?
Well, I think first of all, just to manage the offense. And, I've tried to ask around as far as what his strengths are, not just from what we saw out of him in high school, but, now that he's been on campus for, 9 months now almost. I think he's a kid that, first of all, you've got the intangibles. He's got those sort of natural leadership qualities, throws the football well as far as just, getting the ball out pretty quick and spreading the football around. That's always been sort of his MO. I think for this week, though, manage the offense. I think he has a good grasp of the offense in general. Maybe some of the finer points of playing quarterback at this level, setting protections, making sure you go through all your reads, having that clock in your head, which is probably a little bit different at this level than it is at the high school level and stuff like that. The finer points are going to take time. That's something that is going to be something only comes with experience and reps and going out and, frankly, making some mistakes from time to time. Accurate guy, especially, underneath, intermediate. We'll see what they can hit down the field, too, because I think that's something they're going to have to do eventually, obviously, this year. But, I think he's as ready as you can be as a true freshman in week 2. But, obviously, you're going to have to maybe manage some things that you wouldn't otherwise, if you had a veteran guy in there.
I think with that said, too, I think it's really significant that it seems like Donnell Stanley is going to be moving back to center this week, because I think we saw last weekend against North Carolina. And, part of it's because, Jay Bateman, North Carolina's defensive coordinator, is a 2-time Broyles finalist because he's done such a good job of effectively implementing really diverse defenses, basically just really confusing looks for the offensive line. We saw Hank Manis, I think, really struggle, not only, just in protection individually, but it seemed like Carolina's offensive line oftentimes didn't know where the rush was coming from. That's on the center. So if you're Helinski, that's terrific to have Stanley as opposed to being working with a guy that's still young, that's, in his own right, working on his protections, working on sort of seeing the defense pre-snap. That's basically one less X factor to worry about. But Chris, what do you think that Carolina will, or what do you think Carolina fans will see from Helinski this weekend?
Well, this is a really good opportunity for him to break into college football. Not to totally minimize Charleston Southern by any means, but they're not Alabama.
Yeah, we can minimize them. They lost to my dreadful alma mater by like 100 points. So
they did. They lost to Furman last week, and the score was 46-13 Furman. So not good. They're not going to be a very quality opponent. But that said, I think they'll structure the offense in a way that you would expect breaking in a first-time guy. I think they'll try to lean on the run, which Feaster and Dowdle showed some good things last week. I think they'll have a lot of opportunities in this game. I think they'll break them in with some easy throws, try to get the ball out quickly, try to get them in rhythm. These are things that they need to do anyway, regardless of opponent, but especially this week. Now, one of Helinski's strengths in high school that we saw, like Wes said, getting the ball out quickly, but he also excelled throwing the ball downfield against man coverage, fitting it into some tight spaces. So I'm sure they'll take some shots, try to get a couple confidence builders, but I'd anticipate they'll lean heavily on the run. They'll try to get the ball out quickly and just try to ease him into the game with some easier throws, but he's capable of doing more than that.
I'm very excited. I hope other Carolina fans are very excited because this guy represents the future. Even if Jake Bentley weren't hurt or he was just being benched or whatever, he's not going to be around next year. This season, I think Gamecock fans that already sort of emotionally punted on, even by like July, just saying, well, it's probably not going to be that good a season because you have such a tough schedule. Obviously, the North Carolina game was a football tragedy that people did not foresee, could not have foreseen, and caused them to even check out more emotionally on this season. But watching Helinski, I think getting a glimpse of what the future could look like is what people are sort of hanging their hat on and their hope on. So I, for one, am really excited to see what he looks like, again, just in the pocket, just seeing what he looks like in front of, a crowd of at least 35,000 people, seeing what he's like under the lights, even though the game's going to be during the day. You know what I mean by that expression?
Under the sun.
Yeah, under the sun. Yeah, under the Tuscan sun, exactly. So, I don't know. I'm very excited. Like you're saying, it's going to be, I imagine, a somewhat simplified system, something to get him comfortable, and Carolina doesn't need to show too much, probably. I guess I shouldn't take it for granted, but probably to beat Georgia Southern. So this is a good opportunity to segue into
Charleston
some
Southern.
buy or sell. What did I say?
Georgia Southern.
Charleston Southern, yeah. Doesn't even matter. Some garbage team that Carolina's playing.
And I was going to say real quick, Ryan did a lot of the concepts that are in this offense. He did in high school already. So a lot of the RPO stuff, even some of the like second level RPO stuff where you're having an opportunity to either hand the ball off, but you're making a more intermediate throw. He did a lot of that stuff in high school already. So I think, obviously not to the extent of a college playbook, but there's a lot of stuff that he was already comfortable with that are in this thing. And, and I think, for one, we probably don't know. We don't learn a whole lot. We'll learn some stuff. I don't know if we learn a whole lot this week or next week, just because if they just destroy Charleston Southern and then get beat handily by Alabama, that really doesn't tell us much of anything. I think this season moving forward, as far as Helinski and the quarterback deal, it's going to be defined by what do you do against the like swing games. Missouri
Kentucky
is next.
And Missouri.
Yeah, the Missouri game we're really going to start to learn. Was week one just this really bad day for South Carolina where they didn't play well and it went against them and
they were overconfident.
Was it just a bad day or is it a bad team? I think we're going to start. We won't be able to answer that in the next 2 weeks. I think the week after that with Missouri, that's when we start to find out what this team is all about. And as much as we're talking about Ryan Helinski, I think they're going to need to carry on Joyner as far as the quarterback situation goes too. I think he's going to be a part of this, and I think he'll be a bigger part of this moving forward. And I think they're going to need him. I think it's going to take Helinski and Joyner if South Carolina is going to be good on offense.
In terms of the actual play, I think you're right in that we won't be able to tell much about Helinski, but I think we'll learn a lot in terms of just how he comports himself and how he runs the offense. If he looks like a freshman and looks scared, looks nervous in the pocket, I think that's going to tell us a lot. But if he looks like a veteran, this being his first game, I know it's Charleston Southern, yeah, not Georgia Southern. If it's Charleston Southern, it's going to be easy to look good statistically, but I think just in terms of how he carries himself is going to be interesting. And your point about RPOs is good too, because I don't know. Is it fair to say that Jake Bentley never looked completely comfortable running RPOs? It seemed like he was at his best when Carolina was doing. He had a good game against Clemson, and a lot of that was on RPOs. But I always feel like Jake's skill set, he's better when he's in a more traditional pro-style offense. He never seemed fully comfortable, making those reads, whether to hand it off, whether to pass it, or things like that. But I guess that's revisionist history at this point, and we'll see what Helinski's doing. But to get back to the Charleston Southern game, this is a great opportunity to do some buy or sell, right, Chris? You want to do some buy or sell?
Yeah, let's do buy or sell. New segment we're going to try to do every week. Buy or sell is going to be sponsored by Bishop Real Estate Group, which is Terry Bishop, and he is a former Gamecock quarterback and a 36-year veteran of the real estate business. So if you want to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, Terry Bishop is your guy. Check him out on Facebook. A lot of cool stuff on there. Facebook.com/the Terry Bishop Team. Terry and Becky Bishop. They do a great job with real estate and also big supporters of the Gamecock program. So go check them out, like them on Facebook. They're going to be a sponsor on our podcast and also for a lot of our football content on GamecockCentral.com. You'll see Terry all over our site on there as well, so we appreciate him supporting the show and supporting our work at GamecockCentral.com. Yes, we got a few topics for buy or sell that I wanted to cover.
Yeah, let's get started with Ryan Helinski.
Yeah.
Buy or sell, Ryan Helinski will throw at least 25 passes on Saturday.
I'm going to sell that. I'm selling that. I think they're going to lean heavily on the run game. I think they're going to incorporate Joyner some. And if all goes well for South Carolina, I think they're rushing for a lot of yards, just incorporating Ryan Helinski. Now, maybe he can rack up some yardage, hit some big plays. Maybe the receivers can make some stuff happen after the catch. I think he goes under 25. Wouldn't be surprised either way, but I'm going to go under
Wesley,
that.
you buying or selling 25 passing attempts for Ryan Helinski?
Oh, I think I'm selling as well. I think, like he said, Joyner will get in there as well. And, I was trying to look back. I didn't go look at the numbers. I was even trying to think back to Jake Bentley's first career start as a true freshman. That number may get pushed over the top by some screens and some swing passes and stuff like that. But, I'm guessing I think we set the number at a good spot. I think it'll be somewhere between like maybe 21, 22 passes and maybe 27, 28, something like that. But I must say he throws about 22, 23 passes.
I'm going to buy it. I feel like the coaching staff knows what this game means. I feel like they know they need to get him some reps. I also feel like Carolina's going to run a lot of plays in this game. I don't expect Charleston Southern to have the ball for I shouldn't say that because Carolina always loses the time possession battle like pretty much every game for the last 2 years. But I don't expect Charleston Southern to have a ton of the football. I expect Carolina to run about 80 plays, I think, is probably fair. You make 25 of those passes, have another 40 rushing attempts, and then maybe 15 passing attempts for DeCarrion and Joyner. I could see it. Is that math right? Yeah, that math's right. I could see it shaking out something like that. So I'm going to buy it just to be different.
That was a good thought by Wes on Jake's first start.
UMass?
26 pass attempts in that game.
I knew it was right around that number.
Yeah.
For some reason, I
number.
kept thinking 22, but I don't know where I pulled
17
that.
for 26.
And the symmetry of this happening is not lost on us. Obviously, Jake Bentley getting an opportunity to start against sort of a cupcakey team before he gets into SEC action, an opportunity to sort of break him into a real football game against a lesser opponent. Obviously, that's sort of the case for Helinski here, too. So if it's 26, that would be kind of eerie how symmetrical it is. Next thing we're going to buy or sell, South Carolina, over 300 yards rushing, buy or sell, Chris. For reference, Furman rushed for 369 yards against Charleston Southern.
9.2 yards a carry.
Woo!
Oh, man.
And it's still a tough one, What was South Carolina's number against UNC? Do we know off the top of our heads?
I
it was half that,
I know that
roughly, right?
Feaster had 72, Dowdle had 62.
Okay, so it's about 130-ish, 100.
Yeah, I think
something like that.
I think Jake had like 6 rushing yards after you take away sacks or something like that.
Another Wilhelm's job. When's the last time South Carolina rushed for 300 yards?
Maybe in that Coastal game when Rico went off, because Rico himself had 250 or 260. That would be my guess.
Wes, you go first on this one.
Oh, man. That's 300 yards.
It's a lot of yards, man.
That's so many yards. But y'all haven't like just gone sell, which is the crazy part.
Because
you got to think about it.
I think Feaster and Dowdle looked good last week.
Yeah,
they ran through contact well.
I thought they both had good games. I thought they had 2 of the better games on the team. Honestly, I thought them, Markway, Ernest Jones, and Shy Smith were like my guys.
I think one of them was pretty good.
Yeah.
DJ, not Dylan.
300. You know what? Screw it. I'll say bye. Let's go.
Yes.
But if your boys at Furman can do it now,
I never watched Furman win a football game in 4 years there. Not saying they didn't, but I was just never there.
If they can rush for that many, now, golly, you would assume Charleston Southern has cleaned up some of that.
Well, how much of that is like cleaning up, and how much of that is they're just bad?
If Furman was heavy on the, I can't even locate. It's harder to find like good stat books for this game. Here we go. Their total. So Furman only passed for 140 yards, 17 for 23. So it looked like a lot of shorter stuff. 6.1 a catch. That's small potatoes. But they rushed 40 times for 369 yards.
I think Carolina will definitely
5
run the ball
touchdowns.
40 times, right?
They probably shouldn't. Honestly, they should probably
if they
throw,
run 80 plays, 50-50, right?
Honestly, they should probably throw the ball 40 times and let Helinski just go play.
Yeah. But y'all both picked the under on 25 pass attempts for Helinski, which means you think they're going to be running it more, which means I feel like y'all go over, or y'all would buy here.
I think they can hit some big plays in the passing game, whether it's something like maybe a couple deep shots, but also, getting Shi Smith in space and letting him run.
Wait, no,
things like that.
300. All right, that's
300
great.
yards is a lot.
I've talked myself out of it.
You're selling?
I'm selling.
I was selling too.
300, no. 300
and people
yards,
will be disappointed.
Yeah.
300 yards is I was sitting here thinking, all right, if I was putting real money on this, like big money, what's the most likely that would happen? You got to sell that.
Chris, did you check on the Coastal game?
No, I'm still efforting that.
Okay. All right. Well, let us know when.
I'm like the producer on the show that has to Google the stats all the time.
Exactly.
But I'm not good. I'm not that
job.
good at it though. Is the only thing.
What's yours?
I think I'm going to sell it too. It's a little bit too high. So when we were discussing where we wanted to put the number before the show, I initially said 250. Maybe that would have been, but we just had we had an interesting discussion there right at 300, which is ridiculous. No team should ever rush for 300 yards ever.
All right, so.
But I'm still going to sell. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be 250.
Just for the record, are we all buying 250 or no?
I would buy 250.
I'm buying 250.
Yeah, I'll go 250. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So somewhere between 250 and 300 is what we're comfortable with. All right, last one. Buy or sell. Carolina wins the game by 40 points.
That's a big line. Now Furman, 46-13. I'm pretty bad at math, but that's a 33-point margin of victory. No idea what the line was on that game, by the way.
No idea. And most places you look, there is not a line for the Carolina game. I don't know if that hasn't been updated because of the uncertainty of Jake Bentley. I don't know if we should expect that to be updated later in the week now that Ryan Helinski has been named starter. A lot of times if a starting quarterback's not playing, they'll remove the line from a game, at least temporarily. But if we were to set our own line, and Chris, you did see somewhere that put it
this
right
was
at
per
40.
OddsShark, and I have no idea. I think they're fairly reliable.
Yeah.
I mean,
Vegas Insiders didn't have one. That's where I go. So some will, some won't.
Right.
Given the quarterback uncertainty.
We can set it at 40.
Yeah, we'll set. This is the Gamecock Central line.
Yeah.
You buying or selling 40-point margin of victory for the Gamecocks?
Dead silence.
That was a bad movie. Did you ever see that?
Dead silence?
Yeah.
That's a movie? No.
Yeah, it's a scary movie. It's like a puppet thing. Wasn't super into it.
I think I've got to sell that. That's a lot of
40. So
yeah, it's a big margin.
You don't think he could be 56-13?
Oh, it could be.
Yeah, that's a 40-point margin of victory.
It could be, but I think you're trying to play the odds. Would that score surprise me? Not
you don't
terribly.
think Carolina's going to take out some of the frustration of the North Carolina game on the poor Charleston Southern team?
That's everyone's hope, I think, in the fan base. But
all right, so you're selling everything. You're selling Helinski, 25 passes. You're selling 300 rushing yards.
Yeah.
You're selling it. What do you think it's going to be, like 13-10 final?
No.
Jay Urich gets most of the snaps. What do you think is going to happen on Saturday?
If it's
what does that show? Mad Money or
maybe with the like really loud guy.
The loud guy's yelling and throwing graphics on the screen and stuff.
Right. Let's say it's 45-6. Carolina's up 35-3 at halftime. That'd be a great scenario. Everybody'd be happy. Mm-hmm. And then in the second half, they just sort of lollygag and they got second and third team guys out there, and they don't look all that great. And they win 45-6.
45-6 is that's a real wrench. Actually, now you're making me second.
That's a big margin, but that's 39 points. It's under 40.
Dang.
So I'm just playing the odds.
Right.
Would it be?
I'm selling too.
Yeah. What is wrong with you guys? I'm buying. Mostly because y'all are selling. Because
I'm
not trying to
45-6 things really.
I'm not trying to buy or sell based on let me be different. Like I'm trying to give an actual answer.
Yeah, me too. I think Carolina could win this thing.
But it's not about could.
Carolina should score 56 points. Carolina should have scored 35 or 42 against North Carolina. How much worse is Charleston Southern than North Carolina? I think significantly.
Substantially, yeah.
56 is – if Carolina doesn't score 56, there are some serious problems with the offense, in my opinion.
Unless they go up – now, what if my scenario, they go up 35 points – you don't want to go out there. just so you can say. Now, maybe the second team for South Carolina is maybe Joyner comes in.
But yeah, you're talking
great.
about Joyner and Helinski at quarterback. In terms of running backs, you're talking about Mon Denson, who's got 100-yard rushing games in his career. He was listed as an or starter at the beginning of the season. And then the drop-off in terms of receivers, I mean, you're talking about Javis Dawkins, who's already a borderline starter kind of guy. You're talking about Xavier Legette, that some people think could be the next great receiver at Carolina. So the drop-off from the ones to like the twos and a couple of those threes isn't as significant. Now, maybe on the offensive line is where you see a little bit more of an issue. But I think 56 is very solidly within the realm of possibility. Okay. But anyways, there's our buy and sell. Thanks so much to the Bishop team for sponsoring that segment. We're going to do that every week. That was even more fun than I thought it was going to be. I love buy or sell, but that was some hearty discussion there.
There you go.
All right, one more thing we wanted to get to in the aftermath of the North Carolina game. Now, I'm not going to say that this is 100%, these things are 100% related, that it's exactly causation. May, in fact, be a little bit more correlation, but I'll get your opinions because y'all are the experts. LaVacia Carroll decommitted from South Carolina over the weekend after the North Carolina loss. Was that already coming?
If I'll say it like this. If it was, we were not aware. It wasn't like, is this something that we've been tracking? No, it was not.
So that was really like he watched the North Carolina game and he was like, I'm out.
I mean, we can't say. I think.
I feel like it doesn't happen like that.
I think the move to IMG also sort of you have two factors here that could have played into that, and we don't really necessarily know what the determining factors are. But you moved to IMG, which traditionally has not been a school that's been kind to South Carolina, and
they have some Clemson ties down there.
And he's gotten a lot of new offers lately. Plus, throw in just a performance that, frankly, nobody expected. I mean, and it's a bad loss. I mean, nobody. It's
the worst loss of the Will Muschamp era.
Like we get accused of like sugarcoating and stuff like that, and spin and stuff like that. But I mean, I think you can discuss the why and the how and stuff like that. That doesn't mean we don't believe it's a bad loss. It was a bad loss, and I think, like I said, my question moving forward is, is it a bad day or
bad team?
Yeah, did we completely overestimate this team? I think there are some scary trends there if you take it back to the end of last year and then look at the beginning of this year. But then I then go back, I say, man, there's still some veteran guys on this team that are really good. And, if they make one more play, we're talking about how, man, this team has some things to fix, but they found a way to win the game. When you were talking about if Jake Bentley makes the one throw to Shi Smith, if J.C. Horn makes the one interception that he probably makes every single time in practice.
That was weird, too. That was like
I don't know how the ball
I don't
fit
either.
between his hands. It was like
it reminded me of Angels in the outfield. It's like there is no way in like the physical world that it is possible to not even if he doesn't catch it, to not bat it down. It was like there was a hole in his hand. It was truly bizarre.
But then the fact that the ball went to the North Carolina, it wasn't just like, I didn't even realize watching it live. I didn't realize that the North Carolina receiver had caught the ball because my brain just did not compute that was a because I was like, man, should have been an interception, but I'm thinking, well, at least incomplete pass. And I'm like, wait, he caught to me, Angels in the Outfield, great reference. To me, it reminded me of when you used to play NCAA football and God. You
triggered already.
Yeah, did you ever hit the quarterback and the quarterback's like falling on the ground and then all of a sudden the ball just goes and it shoots out like 20 yards downfield for a completion I don't know, like just it's like it looked like a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Literally,
it really did.
It did not compute correctly and the ball went through his hands, not through the opening in his hands.
Like through the hand.
Through his hands.
Disappeared.
I've never...
I think it just appeared in the receiver's hands.
Yeah, it just like apparated from one side of J.C. Horn's hands to the other.
It's like when I play, like you were out there. Was Jay out there the night you played handball?
Yeah,
Jay Brown
throwing.
So when Jay,
lasers.
Former Carolina pitcher, when he plays handball, when he throws it, the ball just appears in the back of the goal. Like there's no trajectory, or it just you don't see it leave the hand. It's just there.
Yeah,
in the back.
I don't know if anybody out there believes in the simulation theory that we're actually
in the Matrix.
We're in the Matrix.
That's evidence for it, right there.
But that's my first real life evidence that we are.
I don't know, man. That was weird. what were we even talking about? Oh, LaVacia Carroll. So
Yeah.
y'all have said on this podcast before that you don't think, by and large, a recruit's decision about where he's going to go to a school really comes down to one game. Will Muschamp has said something similar and also basically said, if it really comes down to just one game for a kid, we probably don't want him anyways. Do you think they get LaVacia Carroll back after he, has a dalliance with some other teams here, or is South Carolina kind of moving on and looking for another running back target?
Yeah, when he's 2021, so that class,
Plenty of time.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It seems like talking in general that when guys come out of the class, especially when they're like out of state kids that don't really have a ton of ties to the program to start with, that they end up going elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll keep talking to him. I think obviously, they'll keep going after him. But then you look, who knows how the 2021 running back class will end up. There's a ton of other guys out there. I think as far as recruiting, and this may be weird to say considering the lack of big time backs they've been able to get in the past, save just a few guys, but I don't know, just Thomas Brown recruiting that position, you feel good about it. You obviously you got to keep Marshawn Lloyd in the mix and add another guy to that, but I feel pretty comfortable whether it is Carroll or somebody else for 2021 by the who knows what all can happen between now and then.
So you're not worried about this long term? Seeing one decommit doesn't make you say, "Oh, time for Will Muschamp to go." He's losing recruits. He's losing football games.
No, and I think I don't know. It was a bad game, but it was still one game. So I think if some of these trends continue, then that's not good, and maybe other guys do look around. Who's to say? But I think we're all in a situation where nobody really knows what to think right now. We all just sort of, as a collective, freaked out a little bit on Saturday.
It was bad. It was so bad. All right, I don't actually know when we started recording this. It feels like we've gone a little bit longer. It feels like we're sort of getting to the end. But we do need to talk about our Schlotsky's Deli picks contest.
Are we getting Schlotsky's after this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds awesome.
I'm a big Schlotsky's fan here. Glad to have them back on board. We have and by the way, this is completely on me. I've got to go through and figure out a winner. I don't know if anybody actually picked North Carolina to win the game. So I
hope not.
We may give away 2 next week because if you can't win the contest if you pick the wrong team.
Well, it's like the closest, right?
It's the closest to the score.
So who was the closest to picking Carolina? Like, did anyone pick 21-20?
I don't know. I got to go back and look. But yes, we have our Schlotsky's Deli contest going on our Gamecock Central forums. That is free to play, and if all you have to do is register, just go on Fighting Gamecocks forum, register for free. We'd love for you to sign up too, but you don't have to. Put your score in there every week. The closest score will get a $60 gift card or tailgating package, I should say, to Schlotsky's Deli, and then you can go pick it up on the way to the game. And hey, for 1 week at least, your food is taken care of at the game. Really cool package. It's got sandwiches, chips, and my favorite thing, chocolate chip cookies.
They're so good.
Dude, I have such a problem with sweets and cookies, and if you put a cookie in front of me, it's over. And they've got some of the best ones. So, Schlotsky's Deli, glad to have them back for the 3rd year in a row.
Thanks so much to Schlotsky's, and Wes is going to actually be prepared and have our winner, maybe winners, next week. Because, I guess if no one picked North Carolina, I'm fine with delaying that at least. But, go do that. As Wes mentioned, you don't have to be a subscriber. You can find that on the Fighting Gamecock forum. But if you do want to be an insider, and you want to find the Schlotsky's contest on the Insiders Forum, and you're not a subscriber to Gamecock Central, you can be for a month for free with the exclusive code GCPOD. So go ahead and do that because it's awesome, and you're missing out on a lot of good insider stuff if you're not already a subscriber to Gamecock Central. So go do that. That'll do it for Wes and for Chris. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends if you like it and you want to hear more of it. I will be back on Friday with another episode of Get Cocky. Wes and Chris and I will all be back next Wednesday to celebrate South Carolina's first win of the season against Charleston Southern, which will happen by more than 40 points. They'll rush for more than 300 yards, and Ryan Helinski will have 26 passing attempts. But until then, y'all have a good week. Enjoy the game this weekend.